There comes a moment, often quiet, often unexpected, when you realize that the people around you no longer see you as you once were. You say something, and they dismiss it. You share a memory and they smile politely but don't really listen. You try to offer wisdom, hard-earned, delicate, valuable, but it lands in silence or worse in misunderstanding. You begin to wonder, have I become invisible, irrelevant? You think back to when your voice carried weight, when your presence meant something in a room, and now even as you speak, it feels like the world has turned down its hearing. It's not always cruel. Sometimes it's just subtle. Your grandchildren don't ask for your stories. Your adult children gently wave off your concerns. Even your old friends may not see how much you've grown. Not just older, but wiser in ways that words struggle to express. And in those moments, it's easy to feel sorrow. Easy to believe that being misunderstood, or not fully seen, is a kind of fading, a loss. But what if it's not? What if? Just what if? This invisibility, this misunderstoodness, is not a punishment, but a gift. What if you're not being cast out, but being invited in, into a deeper layer of your own spirit, into the silence that no longer needs to explain itself, into the sacred space where truth no longer seeks recognition, it just is. In the Buddhist path, there's an old teaching, let yourself be misunderstood. That too is a form of freedom. It seems strange, almost counterintuitive. Don't we spend a lifetime trying to be seen clearly, heard rightly, loved accurately? But maybe clarity from others is not what liberates us. Maybe liberation is learning how to carry our truth gently without needing it to be approved, echoed, or even understood. In this reflection, we will explore something that few dare to talk about, the quiet power of being misunderstood, especially in old age. We'll look at how Buddhist wisdom transforms this ache into awakening, and we'll see that the very thing that once felt like rejection might actually be pointing you home. So if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, misjudged, or quietly dismissed, this is for you, not to defend you, not to fix anything, but to offer you a mirror in which you might see, perhaps for the first time, that your solitude is not failure. It is depth. It is training. It is freedom in disguise. Lesson 1. You are no longer easily understood. And that means you've grown. There's a quiet turning point in life. It doesn't announce itself, doesn't come with celebration or clear signs, when you realize that the way you think, speak, and perceive the world has shifted, not because you're confused or behind, but because you've grown into a place most people haven't reached. You're no longer speaking from the surface of experience, but from the depth of it. And yet the more you've grown inward, the more others seem to misunderstand you. It might be your refusal to gossip, your lack of interest in petty drama, your growing comfort in silence, or your increasing tendency to observe rather than react. You notice things others don't. You speak less, but with more weight. And somehow those around you, especially the younger, noisier ones, can't quite figure out what's changed. They might even call you distant, stubborn, or set in your ways. But what if you're not becoming stubborn? What if you're becoming clear? The Buddha taught that as we deepen in mindfulness and understanding, we begin to see reality more clearly, but also more differently. The world clings to distraction, to identity, to noise. But wisdom, as it ripens, starts to move the other way, toward stillness, toward detachment, toward knowing without needing to convince anyone else. And so you begin to experience something unexpected. You're no longer easily explained, not even to your own family, not even to your closest friends. You've lived through heartbreak, yet you don't wear it like armor. You've seen people come and go, but you no longer chase or resent their absence. You've felt the sting of being wronged, yet somehow you've let it go. And this calm, this groundedness, makes people uncomfortable because they don't understand how someone can live without always needing attention, always needing to be right, always needing to be heard. They misunderstand you because they are still in the middle of the storm you've already walked through. Take, for example, the story of an elderly woman named Lian, who lived alone at the edge of a village in northern Vietnam. She had once been the head teacher in a bustling school. Voices filled her life: students, colleagues, family. But as years passed, life slowed. One by one, the voices faded. Neighbors would often say she was too quiet, that she seemed withdrawn. But what they didn't realize was that she hadn't become smaller. She had become deeper. In her stillness, she could hear things others missed: the tension in a child's voice, the change in the wind, the unsaid feelings behind a visitor's smile. She didn't speak often, but when she did, her words had the clarity of moonlight on still water. She hadn't grown distant from the world. She had grown closer to herself. In Buddhist teaching, there's a concept called noble silence, a kind of silence not born from fear or suppression, but from inner fullness. It's the silence of someone who no longer needs to be understood in order to feel whole. So if you've been feeling like people around you just don't get you anymore, pause before you try to explain yourself. Ask yourself, have I really become hard to understand? Or have I simply begun to speak a language of depth in a world still obsessed with surface? Maybe the distance you feel is not a gap of connection. Maybe it's a sign of your spiritual maturity. And that's not something to be corrected. It's something to be honored. Lesson 2. When you're misunderstood, you're being freed from approval. Most of our lives we're trained, quietly, consistently, to chase approval. We learn it as children when a smile or a gold star makes us feel worthy. We carry it into adulthood when praise at work or agreement from family feels like proof that we're doing things right. And somewhere along the way, we begin to equate being understood with being loved. But what happens when we grow older and that approval begins to fade? When the people around us no longer nod along, when they don't echo our opinions, when our experiences feel too vast, too nuanced, too quietly earned to be easily explained. At first, it hurts. There's a sting in feeling unseen, especially when you've spent a lifetime giving so much of yourself to others. But here's a deeper truth, one that Buddhist teachings have offered for centuries. Being misunderstood is not rejection. It is release. It's a door opening away from the prison of needing others to constantly affirm who you are, because needing approval is its own kind of suffering. It places our peace in someone else's hands, their reactions, their interpretations, their moods. And when those things shift, as they always do, we're left ungrounded, doubting, lost. But when we are misunderstood and choose not to fight it, when we stop defending, explaining, or fixing others' perceptions, we discover something extraordinary: inner sovereignty. This is not the cold detachment of bitterness. This is the calm detachment of wisdom. The Buddha taught that clinging to identity, to image, to reputation, is one of the roots of suffering. And so when others misunderstand you, it is as if life is gently prying your fingers off those illusions, not to punish you, but to liberate you. Consider the story of an old monk who lived high in the mountains, visited only occasionally by villagers who sought guidance. One day, a rumor spread that the monk was rude, that he dismissed a traveler without speaking. Some in the village began to speak ill of him. When a fellow monk asked why he didn't defend himself, the elder replied with a gentle smile, "Let them misunderstand. I didn't come here to be praised. I came here to be free." That story may seem extreme, but the principle holds true even in everyday life. When someone misreads your silence as judgment, or your peace as aloofness, or your independence as pride, and you don't rush to correct them, you are no longer bound by their approval. You have begun to move from dependence to dignity. It takes great strength to be misunderstood and remain soft, to keep your heart open even as others turn away, to resist the urge to explain yourself just to be liked. But that strength is not hard or cold. It's ripe, like fruit that's finally ready to fall, not because it failed, but because it has fulfilled its purpose. In that falling, in that letting go, there is quiet liberation. So if you feel the ache of being misread or misjudged, pause for a moment, feel the pull to fix the narrative, and then release it. Trust that you no longer need to be seen to be whole. You don't need applause to know your worth. You don't need approval to walk in truth. You are allowed to walk through this life as you are, with clarity, with compassion, and with no need to be explained. Because real peace isn't found in being perfectly understood. It's found in knowing that even when you're not, you're still free. Lesson 3. Misunderstanding is a mirror. It shows you where you're still attached. There is something uniquely unsettling about being misunderstood. It's not just that someone disagrees with you, it's that they've misread your heart. They've taken what you meant gently and received it harshly, or taken your silence and filled it with suspicion. It's a subtle pain, one that lingers, and naturally we want to push back, to explain, to clarify, to prove. No, that's not who I am. But in the Buddhist path, discomfort is never just discomfort. It is a mirror, a teacher, a turning point. When someone misunderstands us and we feel reactive, defensive, angry, sad, desperate to correct, that moment is a profound opportunity. It reveals something deeper than the misunderstanding itself. It reveals where we are still attached to our image, attached to our goodness, attached to being the one who's right or respected or seen. These aren't bad desires, they're human, but as the Buddha taught, attachment, even to something as subtle as our reputation, becomes suffering the moment we grip it too tightly. Think of a small bell in the wind. If it's hung loosely, it rings beautifully with each breeze, but if someone clutches it with a closed fist, it goes silent. In the same way, when we try to control how others see us, when we grasp at being understood, our inner peace disappears. And so, being misunderstood becomes a kind of bell, a gentle chime that invites us to look inward, not to judge ourselves, but to ask honestly, what am I still holding on to? Take the story of Thomas, a 76-year-old widower who found himself increasingly at odds with his grown children. He spoke softly, preferred stillness, and valued thoughtful conversations, but they often interpreted his quietness as judgment or coldness. One evening, after yet another misunderstanding, he went into his room, closed the door, and sat in silence. But instead of replaying the argument or writing a message to explain himself, he did something different. He asked himself why he was so hurt. What was he really clinging to? And he realized, through tears and a slow exhale, that he wasn't craving their understanding. He was craving his old role, the one where his words still carried weight, where his presence still shaped the rhythm of the family. He wasn't just misunderstood. He was mourning a part of himself he hadn't let go. That moment changed everything, not because it fixed the misunderstanding, but because it freed him from needing it to be fixed. The Buddha spoke often about the flames of craving and clinging, tar and shar, and how they burn us from the inside when we insist that life must go a certain way. When we are misunderstood, It's as if life is giving us a chance to release another ember, to loosen another knot. So next time you feel that ache, that sting of being misinterpreted, try pausing. Don't rush to respond. Sit with it. Let it reflect something back to you. Ask, what image of myself am I trying to protect? What story am I defending? What role have I outgrown, but not yet grieved? And then, breathe. Let the misunderstanding exist without needing to strangle it into resolution. Let others see you as they will. More importantly, let you see yourself clearly, compassionately, and without disguise. Because in the end, it's not about how many people understand you. It's about how deeply you understand yourself. And the mirror of misunderstanding, uncomfortable as it may be, is one of the most honest teachers on the path to awakening. Lesson 4. The less you explain, the more peace you keep. There comes a time in life, often after we've tried, stumbled and tried again, when we begin to realize that not every misunderstanding needs a response. Not every opinion requires a counterpoint. Not every silence needs to be filled. And perhaps most importantly, not every part of who we are must be explained to others in order to be real. In our younger years, we're taught that clarity is kindness, that if someone misreads us, it's our duty to clear it up, to smooth the misunderstanding, to make sure they walk away with the correct version of our truth. And yes, there are moments when speaking up is necessary, even healing. But as we age, especially for those walking the mindful spiritual path, we begin to see that over-explaining is often a hidden form of self-abandonment. We trade our peace for the comfort of others. We wrap our lives in justifications, hoping to make ourselves palatable. We defend our stillness, our boundaries, our grief, as if we need permission to be whole. But Buddhism offers a different invitation. Speak only when it improves upon the silence. And sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is to let go of the urge to explain. Let me share a story. There was an elderly man named Arthur who spent most of his days tending his small vegetable garden, sipping tea and journaling. He had been through war, the loss of his spouse, and years of quiet service as a school janitor, a job few saw, but one he held with quiet pride. When he moved into assisted living, some residents found him odd. He didn't talk much. He declined group bingo nights. He smiled, but rarely lingered in conversations. A few whispered, "He's probably depressed," or "He must be lonely." Others assumed he was arrogant or unfriendly. One day, a curious young volunteer asked him why he never defended himself when people misjudged him. Arthur chuckled softly, folded his hands and said, I used to explain a lot. Why I do what I do, why I don't do what others expect. But somewhere along the way, I learned that peace and explanation often live in opposite directions. The more I tried to be understood, the less I understood myself. That sentence lingered, because it speaks to a truth many discover later in life. The more we try to explain who we are, the more we often dilute the very thing we're trying to express. Not because we're being dishonest, but because some things can't be put into words. Some journeys can't be narrated. Some peace can only be felt, not defended. In Buddhist thought, right speech is not just about truth. It's about timing, intention, and necessity. Is it useful? Is it kind? Is it needed right now? And most of the time, when we feel the pull to over-explain, it's not about clarity, it's about fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being alone, fear of being invisible. But the wise soul learns that silence is not a void, it is protection. That not responding is not weakness, it is wisdom. That being misunderstood is not a wound, it is an opening. The less you explain, the more peace you keep, because in that quiet space, you are no longer trying to win over anyone. You're simply honoring your truth as it is, raw, imperfect, sacred. And strangely, paradoxically, it is in that silence that people begin to truly feel you. Not through your explanations, but through your presence. Not through your defense, but through your dignity. So if your voice trembles with the urge to explain, pause, ask yourself, is this coming from fear or from love? If it's fear, breathe through it. If it's love, speak gently. And if it's neither, perhaps silence is enough. Lesson 5. You become a mirror. Their misunderstanding isn't always about you. One of the most liberating truths that unfolds with age, if we are willing to see it, is that most of the time people are not truly reacting to us. They are reacting to something inside themselves reflected through us. Their misunderstanding is often less about who we are and more about where they are. It takes many years, many heartbreaks, and many quiet evenings of solitude to fully realize this. You are not responsible for how others choose to see you. You are only responsible for how you choose to show up, with honesty, with compassion, and with clarity. The rest, that's their story. In Buddhist psychology, this concept aligns beautifully with the idea of projections. The mind, conditioned by past experiences, wounds, fears, and desires, doesn't always perceive things as they truly are. Instead, it overlays its own patterns, like colored lenses, onto the world. And sometimes, especially when you become more inward still or different from what someone expects, you become a mirror for their discomfort. They may see your silence and feel abandoned, not because you've done anything wrong, but because it reminds them of an absence they never healed. They may see your confidence in being alone and mistake it for arrogance, because they haven't yet learned how to stand without company. They may judge your boundaries as rejection, because they were never taught that saying no can be an act of love. You are not causing their reaction, you are simply revealing it. This is not a reason to withdraw your warmth or close your heart. On the contrary, it is an invitation to soften even more, not in self-sacrifice, but in understanding. Take, for example, the story of Evelyn, a 79-year-old former nurse who had always been the emotional caretaker in her family. She had a gift for soothing others, for making people feel seen and understood. But in her later years, she began to shift. After decades of always saying yes, she started saying not today. After a lifetime of overextending, she began to reclaim her rest. She began writing poetry, walking alone in the early mornings, and spending long hours in quiet contemplation, and not everyone liked it. Her daughter said, "You've changed. You're not there for us like you used to be." Her neighbor whispered, "She's gotten cold since her husband passed." At first, Evelyn felt guilt creeping in, but with the guidance of her mindfulness teacher, she began to look more closely. She saw that their reactions weren't truly about her. They were about the roles they had grown used to, about the version of Evelyn that made them feel safe. And now, faced with a more grounded, boundary-honoring Evelyn, they were forced to meet their own discomfort. She hadn't abandoned them. She had simply stepped out of the role they had written for her. And that's what happens when we stop living by others' projections. When we show up in stillness, when we choose truth over performance, we stop playing a part, and people are left to face their own scripts. In Buddhist practice, the more we drop illusion, the more clearly we see that everyone is walking through their own karmic landscape. Their choices, their pain, their reactions, they belong to them. We may be part of their journey, but we are not the origin of their suffering. So the next time someone misreads you, resents you, or walks away without truly hearing you, take a deep breath. Feel the pain if it's there, but don't carry the story they've written. Don't pick up their baggage and call it yours. You are not here to be everyone's mirror, but if you are, let it be a clear one. Let their discomfort reflect their own inner work. Let their confusion be their path to clarity. And you walk your path anyway, not in bitterness, not in self-righteousness, but in the quiet steadiness of someone who no longer needs to be seen perfectly, because they have already begun to see themselves clearly. Closing thoughts. The quiet gift of being misunderstood. So here we are, after walking through the quiet forest of reflection, of truth told not in shouts, but in stillness. And perhaps now, the experience of being misunderstood doesn't feel like a failure anymore. Perhaps it even feels like a doorway, narrow, yes, but sacred. Because what you've just uncovered is not a flaw to fix, it's a gift you've grown into. One that whispers, you no longer need to be seen by the world to see yourself. You see, the world will always have its projections, its misunderstandings, its hasty conclusions. People will come and go, praise and misread, celebrate and overlook. And for a long time, you may have tried to hold it all together, to explain, to justify, to be acceptable. But the truth is, no one else's understanding was ever the source of your wholeness. Not being understood doesn't mean you are lost. It may simply mean you are walking a path too deep, too sacred, too silent for others to hear, unless they are willing to quiet their own minds. The Buddha himself was misunderstood by kings, by disciples, even by family. But he did not spend his life explaining himself. He spent it walking with compassion, resting in clarity, and teaching those who were ready to listen. So maybe, just maybe, being misunderstood is not something to resist, but to bow to. It means you are no longer performing. It means you've stepped beyond needing applause. It means you are becoming who you truly are, not for others, but for yourself. And in that becoming, something even more profound happens. You become safe. You become steady. You become a lighthouse for others who have also felt unseen, unchosen, unheard, because you've stopped fighting to be understood and started learning how to live in understanding. So if today or any day to come, someone misreads your stillness as distance, your simplicity as lack, or your wisdom as irrelevance, pause, smile if you can, and carry on, not in defiance, but in freedom, because this is your time to let go, to soften, to deepen, to be exactly who you are, with no need for a spotlight, only sunlight. And if this message has stirred something in you, if it has reminded you of your own quiet strength, then I invite you to share your reflection. Perhaps your words will be the mirror someone else needs to see themselves clearly too. And if you'd like to continue walking this path with us, slowly, mindfully and together, we welcome you to subscribe to our channel, Quiet Wisdom. Here you are not a project to fix, you are a presence to honor. And even if no one fully understands your journey, know this, it matters, it is sacred, and it is yours.